I'm learning, you're learning, so let's learn together. I'll do all the footwork and heavy lifting to find the guests and subjects that will help broaden our understanding of the Civil War. All I ask from you is your support. Please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and learn with me. That's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And I thank you in advance.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we're talking about something that I find very interesting. We're talking about the Gettysburg College students who volunteered for the Pennsylvania Emergency Volunteer Unit, right? But also in general. Is that right? Because you mentioned some other guys.
Those who served in the war, those who were in the battle, those involved in the aftermath.
So the town of Gettysburg, from the minute the war begins, right? They're hearing rumors of invasion and, incursions into whatever. Why? Why is that such a thing? Is it just because we're so close to the Mason-Dixon line and Virginia is not very far away? Does it have to do with, slave catchers or something? Like, where does this all come from? Or is this like all across South Central Pennsylvania that people are thinking this?
I don't think it's unique to Gettysburg. I think it's across South Central Pennsylvania.
By the way, I'm sorry. Pete Vermilyea and Jared Peatman are our guests today. And also Mikey's in the back on the camera. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's all of the above. I think it's the proximity to the border, to the Mason-Dixon line. It's a day's ride for a cavalryman. There is a history of slave catchers in the area, that they've been through this. We're talking here about the 26th Pennsylvania Emergency Militia, but they're the first of the 1863 Emergency Militia, because the 1st through 25th Pennsylvania Emergency Militia were raised out of the fear of Lee's invasion that ends at Antietam.
Okay. So, go ahead. You were making notes. I want to know, because I think it helps anybody that listens to this, because maybe I can do an updated version someday. What did I get wrong in all that stuff about the town and how they were handling things?
I didn't catch much that was inaccurate. I guess just the thing maybe to highlight a little bit was that, in a sense, war had already come to Gettysburg, not physically to this location, but the impact on the townspeople before. There were already men buried here in Gettysburg that were from the town that had been killed in earlier battles, and they'd had big reinterment ceremonies here in Gettysburg and Evergreen. So in a sense, the 26th is really, interesting, but it's not as though this is the town's first reckoning with the war, essentially.
The one thing I forgot about was the fire in Emmitsburg. Yeah. So that was real, right? That really happened. And the reason I asked that question, folks, is because I was telling them before that the two books that I used for references on the town, one, I won't say which one, but Tim Smith told me that one of them was actually supposed to be written as a novel. And as they were doing their research for the novel, somewhere along the line, like halfway through doing the book, they're like, you know what, let's do this as a history. But some of the novelized stuff got in there in the mix. And so there's certain things that you can't. So I just wanted to make sure, because you guys never hear that about the fire.
No, I don't know the details of the fire. I hadn't heard. I think it said 27 buildings. I hadn't heard that before, but I know those civilian accounts talk about seeing the glow. Multiple accounts talk about seeing the glow. What I liked about what you had there, without getting too into the weeds of the details, is that you convey the fear that the townspeople felt. Okay. And I don't know what details, some details are right. So I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about history in general. This detail's right. This detail's wrong. But they felt the fear. That's true. And whether they were passing rumors along, they believed them. Mm-hmm.
And this was a thing that they'd heard a bunch of times before, that the Confederates were coming in, and then they never did.
The Crying Wolf. And that came out in the narrative that I forget who wrote it. I jotted down the word fear. Oh, Fanny Beeler.
Yeah.
Said, we hear they're coming, but they didn't come.
Right.
Right. And you hear that again and again, going back to 1862, Jeb Stuart's raid in the fall of 1862 was just a couple of miles away.
Yeah.
They had heard all about that. Was it the 10th New York Cavalry was stationed in Gettysburg? Was that winter of 61, 62?
The 10th or the 9th?
One of them.
Mike, do you know?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Was stationed here, A, for extra training, but B, because of their proximity to the Mason-Dixon line and ultimately to Virginia, not so far away.
Do you think Sarah Broadhead was a hard woman to please? She never sounds satisfied in her diary. Now, I understand what she's living through, but the whole thing about, she's like, oh, you've got some, units here, but what good are they? They're new, it's like, well, at least it's something, Sarah. I feel bad.
Right, though, right? I mean,
of course she's right.
Once the battle starts, those guys make it 8 miles in 2 hours. That's pretty good speed.
Sure.
So she's you may be right, but at the same time, she's not wrong either. How much resistance to these troops actually put up in the end?
I just wouldn't want to be Joseph. That's all I'm saying. Her husband.
And they got John Burns as their neighbor, right?
Oh, I know.
And
yeah,
he's mocking them.
And he's yelling at Joseph for not going out and fighting.
Right.
And then Sarah's back there saying, don't you dare go out and fight. And it's just like, which way do I go? And he got kidnapped, though, or captured, didn't he? Joseph.
He does go out and put down trees as barricades and stuff like that. Yeah.
But I thought, doesn't he get captured and then, but they parole him and the guys he's captured with, and they have to walk back from Harrisburg or something, or Carlisle or something like that?
Those are men of the 26th, I think. That happens to some men of the 26th.
Okay.
Because there's some men of the 26th who are captured.
Joseph's not one of them.
He's not in the 26th.
Okay.
Captured out here. What is it? Marsh Creek. Mm-hmm. Some are captured here. Some are captured up north of town at Bailey's Hill or the Whitmer Farm. Because there's this story of them being brought back into town, and then Jubal Early comes out to address them, and he paroles them to their mothers, which is pretty bad. In 1860 America, that's pretty bad. Yes. Some of them get captured twice. I think they're captured here, and then they're captured, then they're paroled, and they're coming back. Maybe they're captured further north, and then they're paroled coming back, and I want to say it's Robert Rhodes's division, but I might be wrong about that. And they're captured again, and they don't have shoes on because they had their shoes taken the first time they were captured.
See, Matt, we're sketchy on the details because as proud graduates of Gettysburg College, we prefer to focus on other people who maybe, did just a little bit more during some of all of
One
this.
thing I wanted to say about that 26 too is, and especially when I heard on Matt's thing talk about the train incident, there were some veterans in this unit. Jennings was a colonel of a 9-month regiment. And I think it's when they hit that cow outside of New Oxford, I think it's the veterans that are the first ones to jump out of the train and cut that up because they saw the opportunity to eat for good food.
Yeah.
And there's the woman who owns the cow. There's accounts of her being aghast when these guys jump out with their knives,
start hacking away at it. How small and fragile was that train, though? That a cow? I mean, they were smaller back then, but you still think it would be heavier than a cow. That it would just brush it aside.
Kind of to your point, Jared, they're in New Oxford, and only 120 men say, let's just
walk.
And the rest say, I'm going to sit here and wait. The emergency can't be that bad.
Right.
We'll just sit here and wait until the train is fixed.
So, okay. So, how about, let's go back to why Gettysburg. So, it's easy for us to think Gettysburg was always important and always this vital place because as long as we've been alive, it's been a name. It's been this big, huge battle. People around the world know it. People refer to it as a way to say it's like carnage or whatever. So, Gettysburg is a thing, the Gettysburg Address, blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't so special prior to the battle. but it was, but it wasn't, but it was. Like, you know, it's like people always compare it to a wagon wheel, you know, so it's the hub on a wagon wheel. All these roads come in. It's a market town, right? We're today an hour and change away from the port of Baltimore. But back then it was still close enough where it's a day or two, probably something like that of traveling.
Yeah. I just want to go back to something you said at the beginning there. You know, Jared and I were both students of Gabor Boret at Gettysburg College. And at the end, like the last class, whichever course he was teaching, in the last class, he would always say, for the rest of your lives, people will say, where did you go to college? And you'll say Gettysburg College. And they'll immediately associate it with the battle. They'll immediately associate it. Now, in my experience, they also say, that's in Virginia, right?
Oh, me too.
Right?
Yeah.
But
when I first moved here and I'd go back home and visit, people would be like, so how's Virginia? And I'm like, how the hell do I know? I haven't been there in years.
But I think, again, man, I don't think all those things are true. It's proximity. But which towns around here aren't places where roads converge? Yeah, there's a rail line. You know, it's the county seat. I think if it's 1860 pre-battle,
but I think part of it too is the particular roads that come through here as well. I mean, still today, you know, if you're going to drive east or west, it's 30 miles in either direction before you hit another decent road.
Yes.
You know, it's all the way up to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, or it's all the way down to Frederick. And then the fact that you have the Baltimore Pike 97 today coming into Gettysburg from the south that are macadamized, right, that are these improved roads. So while it's certainly true that almost every other town in south central Pennsylvania in this part of the country is a crossroads, almost by definition, you know, those particular roads that all come together here, I think do, you know, sort of act to pull.
So maybe is it really then Gettysburg's proximity to the mountains that make it where the battle's going to be, because Lee's coming up from the mountains, and, you know, once you get out of them, this is the first crossroads town that you come across. Or
once he decides to consolidate his forces back in the mountains.
Right. So, okay, so it's... The people of the town, they're dealing with these rumors all throughout the war. Obviously, there is something that everybody, maybe the people at here in town, can delude themselves into thinking is not true, but the authorities are a little more aware, and they know that Lee is in Pennsylvania. And I guess you just look at a map and you go, well, if we know he's here, you know, these are the places that could be at risk, so we need to get people down there or whatever, right? But again, as Sarah Broadhead points out, these are emergency troops. It's like if something happened outside right now in the square and the four of us in this room dropped everything we were doing and picked up a rifle and went out to help the cops put it down, what the hell do we know? Right? Like, you know, I mean, I'm assuming neither of you were in the service, right? Mike was in the service, but he slept, I think, most of the time, right, Mike?
Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service. But like, what would we do, right? It would be a body to get shot is really what it would be if we were up against veteran troops.
But some of that is they had seen people from their town enlist and join, right? Whether it's the 87th Pennsylvania, whether it's Company K of the 1st Reserves or the 30th Pennsylvania, those folks had all been just civilians, you know, at the time that they signed up as well. And you know, they'd been in the Army for a while by this point. But, you know, this idea that you're not trained, maybe it's best to stay out of things. I don't know that quite applies in this particular
I think war in the military has become a much more professionalized operation. I think if it's 1863 Gettysburg, those men have been brought up in an American military tradition of citizen soldiers of Lexington and Concord and the militia and the Revolution.
And they were just tougher to begin with.
This is something I've done quite a bit of research on. And, you know, I think what happens here should put an end to the myth of the citizen soldier to John Burns picking up his rifle off of the mantle and going out to fight an army.
I almost feel like today, if we were ever in a situation where people did that some people would think, well, like the Chinese army could be like, you know, right outside taken every town, and you've heard about it, and now they're outside our doorsteps, and there will be some people who will be like, yeah, but if I pick up a gun to fight them, I don't want to get in trouble. Because you know how like nowadays, like supposedly we have the right to self-defense, but if somebody comes in your house and you shoot them and you're in the wrong state, you're going to jail, right? So it's like that mindset, I think, is kind of what prevails now. Whereas back then it was like, how dare you? How dare you come into my town?
I think it's also somebody else's job. Everything is somebody else's job. But I don't know if they felt that way. I don't know either.
I mean, it's interesting. So there's 22 million people in the North, right? When the war begins.
I don't think they could have felt that way back then. You had to be self-subsistent.
The rest of this preview is available over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg.